In this case, the battery should be replaced. A periodic cleaning of the top of the battery can also prevent unwanted problems. Excessive amounts of dirt and electrolyte should be cleaned off with a solution of baking soda and water. Do not allow any of this cleaning solution to enter the cells of the battery. The battery terminal connections should be periodically cleaned and inspected also. For proper cleaning, the cable should be removed from the battery. Always remove the negative cable end first. To safely and easily remove top post battery terminals, we recommend using a battery terminal puller. This will assure the battery or the battery cable ends will not be damaged during removal. Never use a hammer or twist the cable ends to remove them, as this may result in damage to the post or damage to the internal connections of the battery. Clean and inspect the cable ends and replace the cables if the ends are badly corroded or cracked. For cleaning, we recommend using baking soda and a wire brush or battery terminal cleaner on the cable ends and the battery terminals. Reconnect the cables in the reverse order of removal by connecting the positive cable end first, then the negative cable end. When working with top post batteries, make sure the cable ends fit all the way down over the battery post. Do not pound the cable ends down onto the post. If they fit too tight, carefully spread them with a screwdriver or pliers until the terminal easily fits down over the post. Once cleaned, a light coat of spray-type battery protectant on the terminals will help prevent future corrosion. Now check the condition of the battery hold-down. If it is corroded, replace it with a new one. Coating the hold-down bolts with a light coat of petroleum jelly or battery spray protectant will retard future corrosion. Now let's take a look at testing your battery and determining its condition. One way of determining the state of charge of your battery is by measuring the specific gravity with a battery hydrometer. If your battery is like this and is not equipped with removable caps, this test cannot be performed. To measure the specific gravity, you need to test each cell individually. Insert the hydrometer into each cell. Draw out some of the electrolyte and hold the hydrometer steady until the floating balls remain constant. If the level is too low to test, add distilled water and charge the battery before continuing this test. Now read and record the state of charge of each individual cell. Return the electrolyte back into each cell after testing. If all the balls in the hydrometer float, it is a fully charged battery. If one or more of the balls fail to float, you have a low specific gravity reading in that cell. If this happens, charge the battery with a battery charger and then retest. If the cells test bad after charging, the battery must be replaced. A low state of charge in all of the cells may point to a malfunction in the vehicle's charging system. Check to make sure the vehicle's alternator belt is tight and in good condition. If it is, the charging system should be checked for proper operation. Another method to test the state of charge of your battery is a simple voltage test. Connect the leads of the voltmeter across the battery terminals and the voltage should read approximately 12.5 volts. If your voltage reading is between 11 and 12.5 volts, charge the battery with a battery charger and retest. Whenever connecting a battery charger, always connect the charger clamps to the battery before plugging it into an electrical socket. Also, always unplug the charger before disconnecting the charger clamps to eliminate any possible sparks. If the voltage test reads less than 11 volts after charging, no further tests are required. The battery must be replaced. If your battery passes the hydrometer and the voltage tests, but you still think it might be bad, there's one other test that can help you tell its condition. That's the load test. A load test can be performed in a couple of different ways, either with a voltmeter, like the one I've got down here, or a load tester, like this one here. Load testers are easy to use, can be rather expensive to own. So provided your starting system is okay, you can load test your battery with a voltmeter. Here's how. First, connect the red lead to the positive terminal of the battery, the black lead to the negative terminal or a good chassis ground. Okay? Now notice the reading on the voltmeter. The scale on the voltmeter should read between 12.5 and 13.5 volts. Now if it's below 12.5 volts, check the level of the fluid and recharge the battery before going on. Then, run the coil wire over to a good chassis ground. Or if you have a GM vehicle,
Without a coil wire, disconnect the 12-volt power lead going into the distributor. This will disable the ignition so you can crank the engine without it starting. Then, have a friend crank the engine for about 15 seconds while you're watching the reading on the voltmeter. The reading on the voltmeter should never go below 9.6 volts during this test. Make sure you crank the engine for the full 15 seconds during the test. If the reading does go below 9.6 volts, the battery is weak and needs replacing. As I mentioned earlier, for any load test to be accurate, the battery fluid level must be okay and the battery in a fully charged condition.
Let's review battery maintenance and testing. Always practice safety when working around batteries. Check electrolyte level and top off with distilled water if needed. Clean the battery case with a solution of baking soda and water. Thoroughly clean the battery terminals and cable ends and coat with a protectant. Check the battery hold down for secure mounting. Test the battery by hydrometer method and/or voltmeter and load test. Charge and retest if the battery fails. Replace the battery if it fails after charging and retesting.
Okay, here we are. Now the tools you're going to need to install your own battery will vary, depending upon which style of battery you have. The battery in your car may look like this, and have the terminals right on the top of the battery case, thus the name top post battery. Or it may look like this, and have the terminals on the side of the case, and be called a side post battery. The one we'll replace is the top post style. The tools I'll use include a top post battery terminal puller, battery terminal end cleaner, terminal spreader pliers, ratchet, and the correct size socket for the terminals, and the correct size socket to remove the hold down. The other items I suggest having are a pair of safety glasses, a shop coat of protective clothing like I'm wearing, some baking soda and water mixture, and some battery protectant spray or petroleum jelly. Lastly, before starting, don't smoke or have any open sparks or flames around the area that you're working in. First, make sure the ignition switch is in the off position and turn off any lights or accessories to help minimize sparks. Then identify which is the ground or negative battery cable. Don't just assume the color on the cables denote which is positive and negative. The opposite end of the negative cable will usually attach to the engine block and might have another small ground cable that goes over to the body or inner fender. Now, to prevent sparks when disconnecting cables, always remove the negative cable first. Start by loosening the nut on the cable with the ratchet and socket. Okay. And with the nut loose, I'm going to use a battery terminal puller like this to remove the cable end from the top of the battery. Never hit the cable end with a hammer or twist it with the pliers, because you could create a short circuit inside the battery and an explosion could result. Now, I'll just tighten up this nut on the puller, which will tighten the little fingers underneath the terminal. And when that's tight, turn the center nut on the puller until it pulls the cable end up and off from the battery. Okay, now I'll just remove the puller and set the cable down off to the side. Next, I'm just going to repeat the same procedure on the positive terminal. First, I'll loosen up the nut on the terminal. Okay, that looks pretty good. Then I'll put the battery puller in place, slide the fingers underneath the clamp.